This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I am your host, Mike Rapin. Joining me this week, two proud Saiyan warriors looking for the Tournament of Power. This week, I'm joined by host of the Next Issue podcast, Danny.
Damn it, Kakarot.
And our good friend, longtime friend, Rene.
That's what's up.
I'm very excited to talk to both of you today because today is another one of our famous, well-loved, screamed about in the echo chamber, in the annals of the in the hangout dungeon that is the Discord. People love these episodes. We're doing a panelist episode, and today we're talking all about our good friend Rene. But before we get into that, the higher ups at IRCB have informed me that I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? I'm going to take Rene's confused face to say that he's got something to say. So Rene, tell us, how have you been? What's been going on, man?
I'm just like, who's higher than you in this?
We can't speak of them. The investors, they do not want to be named.
Oh man. Well, I've been good, just doing it, reading stuff, and, trying to get back into reading more stuff, but good.
That's fantastic. That's good to hear. Well, why don't you tell us about what you've been reading, Rene?
Well, I've been reading a lot of stuff, so it was really hard to pinpoint it down. So instead, I just read a brand new thing for this. So I read a volume that I picked up the other day, which was Fire Force Volume 17, story and art by Atsushi Okubo, who is the creator of Soul Eater. And it is a series about firefighters with powers. It's wild. And just a fun fact. The fabric of the universe is tied to the fire powers of the firefighters. Yes, that is absolutely right. The firefighters fight actual fire with fire. It's dope.
Okay.
It's great. I haven't read the series in about a year and a half. So diving right back into volume 17 was a trip. But, I loved every second of it. And I think literally tomorrow I'm going to go and buy more volumes.
Is this the series where people randomly spontaneously combust and that's why they need so many firefighters, because people just when they set on fire and burn to ash, they set whole buildings on fire and stuff? That's this series, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to mention, if Rene didn't, that he's kind of glossed over the scariest part of this world, that people just randomly catch on fire.
That's true.
Great. It's great.
Yeah, well, I was trying to keep it lighthearted, Danny.
Sure.
Here's the thing. Shonen manga.
If people are going to jump into this in volume 1, they need to know what horrors befall them. I mean, I don't think you would spoil the big twists and turns of Attack on Titan, but you would probably tell them about the weird monsters with bugged out eyes that kind of run after people and eat them, right? If you were pitching that series.
Well, I mean,
you gotta, right?
It's on the cover. It's on page 2 of volume 1. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
They get introduced to it pretty quick.
Sure.
It's that's actually kind of the thing that I love about this series, because it's just like Soul Eater. You dive right in immediately. Like in Soul Eater, they're the moon's got a face, move past it. It's always a crescent. Also, there are people that turn into weapons and they need to kill witches. Also, death is real.
Oh.
Like
Simple.
the entity of death. Yeah. Listen, if you're going to get hung up on stuff like that, don't read manga. That's all I'm going to say.
I know. I'm playing dumb intentionally. But so 17 volumes into this series, you're still digging it. You're still loving it. I mean, what makes this book work for you? I'm curious.
It's got all the tropes that I love about shonen manga. It's got tough characters, goofy characters, also just a lot of really cool action scenes. The power system is really cool. The actual underlying, there's a lot of our main character also sort of looks like a psychopath. He grins at whenever he's uncomfortable, and people take that as he's sadistic. But he's I want to be a hero and protect everybody, and everyone's you look like the devil. So it's just kind of. Honestly, just the fact that it hit the ground running and just gave you all these things within 5 pages. I was I'm in. I don't really need anything. And then it just progressively kept on being cool. And that's really all I want, is I just want things to be cool.
I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've been sitting on the first dozen volumes of this from a Humble Bundle way back in the day.
I got that
Maybe
same
I'll
Humble
give
Bundle.
this a try. I know, bless Humble Bundle for, I'm just like, oh, $25 here, $30 there, and I'm just like sitting on thousands and thousands of pages of comics. But I just looked at this recently because I was going through trying to reorganize things in my Dropbox, and I was like, oh yeah, that Fire Force series. So I'm glad to hear that 17 volumes in, it's still Rene level cool, which to me is like a scale that I have to measure like shonen manga on. But we'll get into that maybe in the second half.
Aw.
Before Rene starts to cry, Danny, how have you been? How have comic books been?
I'm doing very well. I do want to say, I think Soul Eater and Fire Force, like the creator has such a distinct art style. It's one of the things. Like when I saw the first images for the Fire Force anime, I was like, this looks just like Soul Eater. This was before I even knew it was done by the same creator, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta check it out. So yeah, highly recommend it. The anime is also pretty great because all the fire stuff looks. I haven't read enough in the manga to be like, oh, this looks great, but I can assure you that it probably looks great based on the anime.
Oh yeah,
So,
I agree. It looks phenomenal. Also, the opening song, the very first one,
oh yeah, they
absolutely
slap.
slaps. Incredible.
Yeah, for sure. There's also this little sound effect when they do the fire. I don't know what it is, but it just gets stuck in my head. But before we do a full Fire Force season 1 analysis,
Right.
um, I'm doing very well. Trying to figure out which vice to really lean into. Like, I'm still playing the One Piece game. A lot of
Nice.
fun. But then one other thing that happened recently is, I don't know if you guys have seen, McDonald's has put out these collector
No,
glasses,
Danny, no.
and I have 3 of them. So if you're watching this, maybe this will be a clip or it'll be on Patreon. But yeah, I have 3 of them. I
What's
have
on these glasses? I
so
knew that
this
they put out
one's
collector's glasses, but I was like not even willing to engage in any capacity.
Yeah, this one's Beanie Babies. This one's Hello Kitty and Snoopy. And this one is all the Coca-Cola Christmas stuff, like with the bear and all that.
Okay.
There's a few more. There's a Barbie one. There's 6 in total. So,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for I don't know
but
why I was expecting X-Men on the glasses.
So did I. I genuinely thought you were going to
I
be like, oh, and this is the X-Men one, and this is the Avengers one. Okay.
I wish I would have bought 6 meals that first day just to try to get them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily, through the magic of TikTok, they've told me how to figure out which one's which because they come in a blind bag, so you don't know which one you're getting. But people have already figured it out. So I'm gonna go and very nicely ask if they could, if I get a duplicate before I open it. I'm gonna very nicely ask those workers that are severely underpaid and overworked if they could please check in the back if I could get a different
Right.
one.
Right.
But as far as comics have also been great. To keep up, I think my last episode I was on, I mentioned that for the top of my pile, I was gonna read DC versus Vampires World War V #1. This is
Mm-hmm.
from DC Elseworlds, the continuation of the DC versus Vampires story that started long time ago. That was the original was done by James Tynion and Matthew Rosenberg with art by Oda Schmidt. This second iteration, because probably James Tynion is writing like 10 other books and he's too
Yeah.
busy, is
Yeah.
only done by Matthew Rosenberg with art by Odo Schmidt, colors by Pierluigi Casolini, and letters by Tom Napolitano. There's really not a lot of like, oh, let me tell you about all the twists and turns. This is very straightforward. There are vampires in the DC universe. They got tired of like having a truce with humanity and they just started attacking. And they figured if they turn some of the powered individuals, some of the metahumans in the DC universe into vampires, they could probably take over the world pretty easily.
Sure.
So that's the premise of the first one. In this one, we have the state of the world as it is now. We catch up with a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Kyle Rayner, who have been in space while all this has been happening. And I think that's one of the funnest things. Like whenever something like this happens, or whatever the zombie book that Deceased, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like whenever heroes that have been off world for a while come back and they're like, oh my god, what the heck happened here? We left it and it's now all a mess. They land on Earth and they're like, did you detect any life forms on the way down? He's like, nope. So it's a lot of fun. And Otto Schmidt just has these like great character models, and also draws really great action. His style is very dynamic and it really works, especially when you're doing like vampire stuff, because the sharp fangs and there's a lot of all these angles. Their eyes turn very differently, so like it really really works. And I think Matthew Rosenberg just very efficiently sets up the world again. If you're a new reader, I recommend you read the original one, but you don't have to if you want to check this out. Um, there was also a really cool tie-in series called like Immortals, I think. No, maybe that was for DC's, but it was like all the people that had healing factors, how they would navigate in this world. And I was like, well,
Okay.
that's a fun premise.
I was curious about like how that worked, but there's a whole series on it. That's cool.
But
That's
I think
cool.
that's DC's Unkillable, so that might be the zombie series. I'm kind of mixing them up.
Okay.
Either way, both are really fun. But yeah, there's lots of vampires, lots of gore, a lot of death. Your favorite character may either die or turn into a vampire, or already be a vampire. Who knows? So
Oh no.
um,
Not Plastic Man.
oh,
I feel
I
like
wonder if
Plastic
they
Man
can
would
actually bite him.
run. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
what I was thinking, Danny.
Exactly.
Well, interestingly enough, Fantastic Blood Hunt just happened, and then the Fantastic Four tie-in issue, Reed Richards couldn't be turned into a vampire because every time they try to bite him, he's just stretchy, right? So they can't really bite him and turn him into a vampire. So I would assume Plastic Man will work very similarly. Great point, Mike. I'm glad you're bringing up all these issues that the readers are going to have, but luckily they have some great creators behind this that will easily answer all your questions.
I was gonna say, I think with the Green Lanterns coming back, that opens up the door to space vampires.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I don't want to stay on this for too long because I worry that we're just going to unpack this too much. But you're telling me that people came down from space to Earth and they didn't detect any life forms. Are you saying that vampires are not considered life forms? Is that what the implication here is in DC's continuity?
Well, I don't know. I think you're gonna have to read to find out, Mike. I'm not sure
God,
exactly of all the.
give me Matt Rosenberg on the phone right now. I can't believe this.
I mean, I would love to talk to him. There's
was
plenty
gonna
of other
say.
kids. Plenty of other things
We're
I would
gonna
love to
have
talk.
him.
Yeah.
We're gonna have him on the show, and it's just gonna be like, yeah. Danny's got some questions, but I've got a question first, Matt.
Yeah. Listen,
It's gonna be
four
a
kids
real
walk
great
into
time.
a bar, but
Yeah.
Mr. Matt,
I mean into a bank,
please.
not a bar.
Right, yeah, Mr. Matt. All right, well, let me talk about a book that I've been reading. It's been a wild bit of time since I was last on the show. I don't know when this is going to air. I'm sorry, folks, but regardless, I did sit down and read some comic books. Got some really interesting comics from Image recently, but I decided I would take like a step outside of that world because it seems like that's all I've been reading recently. And I sat down and I read Godzilla Skate or Die number 1 and 2. Which like I was like, what the hell could this book possibly be? Right. I was like genuinely baffled in terms of like what could a skater book, like I was hoping Godzilla would be on a skateboard. Honestly, that's all that I wanted, is like Godzilla doing like the Tony Hawk 900. But this book actually is not that. It's about a handful of like teenage skaters who live in Australia. They at one point met up at this place that was like their favorite skate spot, and it's their favorite place in the world. They're on a school field trip when suddenly something crashes into the Australian outback, way far out west in Australia, and it starts tearing ass through the Australian like land, I guess. It's a kaiju of some kind because the kids like recognize it because they get like text messages, and suddenly the world government or whatever government, the news starts reporting, oh no, that Godzilla is coming out of the ocean. And it turns out that Godzilla is trying to face off against this monster that has crash landed in Australia. And the center point of where Godzilla is going to be is where this skate hangout is for these 4 kids. And so they're like, we got to get to the skate hangout before these kaiju destroy it because we need one last skate there. And I'm like, hell yes. hell yes, this is exactly the kind of ridiculousness that I want. This is a book by Lewis Joyce with letters by Russ Wooten. Lewis Joyce does all the art, does all the writing, and it is a bonkers looking book. It's very punk rocky. Everything's intentionally like very blocky. It's super stylistic, and Godzilla looks cool. This other kaiju looks super cool. All the action is incredible. They do these fantastic things in the first 2 issues where like the kids are trying to skateboard and get away from the government who's trying to ask everybody to evacuate the city, and they're like flying through the city, and off in the background like the clouds form Godzilla, or the clouds form this other monster in the smoke. It's so cool. And if you get just let go of all inhibition and just have fun with a comic book, this book totally rules. I highly recommend Godzilla Skate or Die number 1 and 2. That's what I've read. That's all it's outer. That's all I've read so far. And man, it is so much fun. It's really dumb, but really, 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 really fun. So yeah, I don't know. Highly recommend that. It's super cool.
I want to read this immediately, and
I figured
I want it to be a movie like now.
Yeah,
that sounds like the raddest thing I've ever heard of.
The thing is, it's like it's such an over the top concept, right? Like these kaiju are about to battle in your town, but you're like, we gotta go to the skate park one last time. Like it feels like some dumb thing that would be made in the 80s, but it's made into a comic book right now. And it's, I don't know, it's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of really lovable characters that are really fun. And quite honestly, it's like watching any other Godzilla movie or an Aliens movie. You kind of like only care about the characters so much because you kind of want to see the kaiju fight. But at the same time, the characters being kind of fun and being like very punk rock and fuck the police, like fuck authority, you know, is very, very cool. And an entertaining thing to read. So Godzilla Skate or Die. Go read this book. You're going to have a blast. I don't know if this is like going to be a 4-issue series or what, but like, nonetheless, just go out there. IDW is still cranking out some fun books, and that's all I can ask if they're going to hold on to the Godzilla IP.
My question is, since they're in Australia, is there a mention of a skateboarder named Shane O'Neill?
I would have to go back and double check, but at one point you do get to see pages of the little like zine that they put together, and that may have been mentioned. So I'll have to go back and double check, because I don't recognize the name, so I probably would have ignored it when I read it, but I'll let you know.
He's a very good and popular skateboarder from Australia.
Okay.
At least I think he's from Australia. If I'm wrong, oh no. That'll be bad.
Danny, what were you gonna say?
When I saw this on the previews, I was like, I spent a good 10 minutes trying to figure out if Skate or Die was a property that I was not aware of, like a franchise or a license. And then I finally ended up asking my co-host, and they were like, "No, it's just a lifestyle, dude. Like the crossover is just Godzilla versus the skater lifestyle." And I was like, "All right, I get it." It's interesting because now we have a lot of these writers that are like, the creators are like, you know, either Gen Xers or elder millennials. So like we're getting a bunch of skateboard books. I read Rick Remender's and Brian Posehn's Grommets from Image, and I was like, this is also a skating book. Like we're gonna get a plethora of like anything that we used to do as kids outside. Yeah. Like that's just gonna be the themes and topics of all the upcoming slate in 2025.
Well, the thing to remember is that like they back in the 90s and in the 80s when these things were popular, there were like 40 and 50-year-old guys trying to write those comics, but they just didn't get it, versus there are people now like Rick Remender and Brian Posehn who like lived that life, and now they're writing comics to be nostalgic about it. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what other kinds of things. If they make a Pogs comic book, I'm going to throw out my entire collection. I think that's what's going to happen. Total aside, I did get an ad on Instagram that said Pog is back. And there was a big thing of someone trying to sell me a $250 box set full of Pogs and Slammers. And I went, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But maybe we could talk about that in the post show, because we got to move on. We got to talk about comic books that we're going to be reading next, and whether they're new, they're old, or whatever. So I'm going to bounce back over to Rene. Don't start talking about Pogs. Just tell me what's on the top of your pile. God damn it.
Well, I mean,
I see your face and I know what you're going to do, and I'm saying no.
Well, you're wrong, because I wasn't going to talk about Pogs. I was going to mention that Skate or Die was a video game series, and it was rad.
Okay.
We had it. It was really hard. I mean, I was also 4. Anyways, top of my pile. I've been reading Old Boy. The manga, originally by story by Garon Tsuchiya and art by Nobuaki Minagishi. I read through volumes 2 through 6 because I read volume 1 like years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
so I read through volumes 2 through 6 in about a day or two, and then I hit my monthly hoopla limit, and I was devastated.
Mm-hmm.
So I've honestly just been waiting for that to pass so that I can finish, because I think I've got like 2 or 3 volumes left in the series.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
Yeah, I was surprised at how short it was. I saw this video where they were talking about, they're like, it's a massive series. I was like, what?
It's like whoever said that, it's like, buddy, you don't understand how this works at all, I don't think.
Yeah. They don't know about the 50 chapter rule.
I will ask, we'll get into that. I will ask, for those of folks at home, Rene, do you have like a summary of what this old boy story is? Because the manga is a little bit different than the movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the main plot is pretty much the same as the movie. There is a guy who is kidnapped, and he's kept in a small room in captivity for 10 years, although I think in the movie it's like 15. But he's kept prisoner for 10 years, doesn't know why, and then he's just released. And then as he's like sort of trying to get back into the world, he's also trying to find out, who kidnapped him, who held him prisoner, and also why. Because and this is where like a big difference from the movie and the book is, because in the movie there's just like too many people for him to consider, whereas in the manga he's just like, he kind of kept to himself. He's like, I don't know anyone that would do this to me. So there's been a lot of differences, and there's a lot more like psychological stuff, like because you're also in the main character's head throughout the entire thing, and the pacing is very, very different. So it's a very easy read, especially since there's not a lot of dialogue happening for a lot of it. Gorgeous looking book though. A lot of the scenery in the city, and just lots of shots of the moon, because there's also this very large sense of freedom happening for the main character in the book. So he looks at the sky differently because he's just been in a room for 10 years. But yeah, so that's pretty much the plot, is he's just sort of figuring out, and he's got like a couple people that he's talking with. Like there's a young woman that he's falling in love with. He meets up with an old friend. He sees an old flame. And also he like partners up with like his teacher from elementary school, who's also like a noir detective writer.
Yeah. Maybe the weirdest moment in the book of many weird moments, in my opinion, but yes.
Yeah, there's a lot with hypnotism in the book, which like there's some of that in the movie as well, although I don't think it's to the same extent. It's been a couple of years, but it was one of those things where it was like, seen the movie's got incredible action scenes, and also it just is a gorgeous movie, messed up movie, but also it's a good watch. But like I was like, oh well, anytime you see an adaptation, you want to, or at least maybe I'm just like this, I want to read the source material. And
right
so I just started, and I've been enjoying it. And again, it's like a shorter series, so just trying to just knock that off the list.
Dude, well, I'm excited to hear what you think when you finish it, because I read it when we did it for the IRCB movie club. We did the movie and we talked about it. I was like, well, I'll just blast through this series, because I had been sitting on it from Comixology days way back, and I was like, I'll just read all this. And I was in the same boat where I was like, oh, this is super easy. Like I blasted through that entire series, like in a good way. Like it's such a fast, easy read to get through. So yeah, let me know. I'm excited to hear what you think.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to clarify for our listeners that Rene is talking about the good movie from 2003, directed by Park Chan-wook, not the American remake by Spike Lee.
Right.
So be aware of that difference, because it's big difference.
Yeah, do not watch the Josh Brolin version. It's unsettling, and the original from 2003 is unsettling, but it's unsettling in a different way, the American version.
It does have a lot of Avengers in that movie, which is weird.
A lot of Avengers in that movie for some reason. So that's another maybe that's a different discussion of
Just
like the track from
about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot about that, and also great call out, Danny, because I was like, oh no, everyone's gonna know which one I'm talking about. So that was a great call.
I don't want, I don't
Didn't
want
even
Mike
think
getting
about it.
emails like, "You made me
Yeah.
watch this crap movie with Josh
Right.
Brolin."
They'd be like, "What are they talking about? This is
Are they talking about Jonah Hex? What's going on? You got to be more specific.
Yeah. That'll be the next IRCB movie clip, sure. But no. So I'll talk about a book that I read, or excuse me, that is on the top of my pile, and that is PeePee PooPoo #1. This is by Carolyn Cash. This is the Silver Sprocket book that I couldn't believe existed, because I think the first issue that came out was called PeePee PooPoo #420. There have since been subsequent issues, PeePee PooPoo #69, PeePee PooPoo 8005, because I don't understand where this book is coming from, but like it's all bits and ridiculousness. But this is Caroline Cash, and in this specific issue, since this is the 4th issue in the series, even though it has a #1, Caroline discovers a fresh start is surprisingly hard to make, and Philly. I don't know what that means. Romance blossoms in the story First Date, a classic Alison Bechdel comic. It's an update in Femme and Butch, and A Night Out turns complicated in Stoned Again. Carolyn Cash's gay modern take on the 1960s underground comic continues to make readers say hell yeah. I'm excited to say hell yeah at the end of this. I think this is it's a very beautiful book. For those of you who are watching this, it is a full-size, humongous book that just says, it says PeePee PooPoo on it, Rene. I'm sorry, you just have to deal with it. But yeah, it feels like just a magazine of individual comics. Some have color, some are just in monochrome. Each issue, I think, or at least this issue, comes with a big old sticker pack in the back, so I can put a big old PeePee PooPoo sticker out. Or the sticker that says, "Is poop vegan?" Which is honestly a great question. So yeah, this is Rene is losing it over there. I don't know. I forgot that I ordered this back when I got my Silver Sprocket digital subscription, because I was like, hell yeah, I got to do that. So yeah, this showed up in the mail the other day. I'm excited to sit down and read it. It's very high quality. The printing, the card stock, is all very, very, very nice. So totally worth your $10 in my opinion. So I'm ready to breathe this book in. That's what I wrote in my notes. But yeah, this looks fun. And it's an award-winning series, right? Like, I got to try it. So, and I've heard great things. Paul said great things. I've heard from other people that say it's very good. So I'm excited to try the latest issue, since I don't think they're really like truly interconnected. But I do have the other ones on back order, 420, 69, and 80005.
You don't think there's a larger PeePee PooPoo cinematic universe coming, Mike?
There might be. But this is an Eisner award-winning, Ignatz award-winning comic book. So you know what? There's nothing funny about this, Rene. But it is called PeePee PooPoo #1. So
no,
Danny,
we need to talk about this, because the reason that I'm laughing so hard isn't just that it's PeePee PooPoo. When I saw that in the doc, I thought that was a placeholder. I thought you were just going to put something else different. So that being the real book has thrown me for a loop. And I'm going to try to get it together while Danny talks.
Listen, we are adult men. At this point, we can't even like say that we're like young adults. We are full ass adults, Rene. Okay, Danny, tell us about what you've been reading.
Yeah. Before that, just a little inside baseball. I do appreciate Brian, who's proof listening, marking the PeePee PooPoo to make a clip. Unfortunately, the algorithm in YouTube does not like PeePee PooPoo as the title of the clips, so we're gonna have to find a workaround. So, but thank you, Brian, because
I'll put asterisks in the title or something.
Yeah, we'll have to do something else, but definitely want to get that out there for the people. The masses need to know. Let me try to rein this back in anticipation of Batman Day coming up the weekend of September 21st. I wanted to pick up Batman book. Plus, I'm also contractually obligated by Warner Brothers and DC Entertainment. Right. So I picked Batman the Barbarian #1. This is a DC Comics Elseworld story that's launching this week. Should be as of the release of this episode. This is with a story and art by Greg Smallwood. That's a big check mark already there for me.
Done. I don't even read Batman. I'm buying this book. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But in this book, the fearsome blade-wielding Batman, or kind of like a Conan with Batman cowl, is there to help those who would become prey in a world where sorcerers sacrifice the innocent to gain power. So I already love the premise, right? Conan the Barbarian meets Batman or something like that. Let's go. Then you got Greg Smallwood doing the art. I'm very interested in that. Now, I don't think I've read anything written by Greg Smallwood if he's written something before, but I've read enough of his comics that I'm sure he's probably got the chops for it, right? And what better way to look at it than in this DC Elseworlds book that is not tied into anything other than you probably need to know maybe who Batman is, kind of, maybe not even that. Uh, so yeah, I'm very excited to see what he could do. I know this isn't as exciting as PeePee PooPoo, but I think we're still gonna have a good time with this Batman the Barbarian.
I say disagree. That sounds awesome.
Dude, this sounds like the coolest book I've ever heard of in my life. And with Greg Small, like if it was anybody else, I'd be like, oh, this sounds cool. Maybe I'll check it out. Greg Smallwood on art, I'm in. I just literally just went and subscribed to it on my comic shop's website. Like I don't buy Batman books, guys. I'm buying this Batman book. I'll pretty much do anything at this point to get Greg Smallwood comics in my hands. So yeah, there's like, I'm kicking myself for not having bought all of the Human Target issues. Right? I have the trades and they're fine. But man, oh man, like talk about some of the most beautiful art you can see in comics. Whew. Yeah, I'm getting this. This sounds awesome.
Now I wish I had a promo code so I could get a piece of that.
I'll talk to the higher ups. I'll talk to the higher ups about that during the break. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about our good friend, Rene. Danny and I have some questions for him. We need to get to the bottoms of these. So we're going to do that right after this.
It's the Gallows Man! Witness action, humor, grotesque violence, and everything in between as the Gallows Man and his team try to stop the Nazi threat that has infiltrated their city. My producers are saying it's Adam West Batman meets Inglorious Bastards. Whatever the hell that means. Well, what are you waiting for? Help support this series by backing the Gallows Man numbers 1 through 3 over on Kickstarter today. There, I did the ad. Will you let me go now? Okay, I'll say the stupid stuff. Baby, get back. Have you ever seen a dead body? No cap, these chicken nuggies be bussin', gang. Would you like to see a dead body? Morpheus, Dorpheus, Orpheus, go eat some walruses. Someone's getting a visit from the PeePee monster. There, I said it all. When will you let me go?
As I said before the break, we have some questions for Rene on this week's episode. They're very serious questions, but I want to remind everybody at home that Rene's been on this show for a very, very, very long time. I mean, one of the very earliest episodes of IRCB, episode 113, titled I Like Your Songs, Mike. This came out April 30th, 2017. Rene, you've been on this show for a very long time. I'm just curious, why?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
I want give me the short answer first. Let's start there.
You're my friend.
Oh, well, that's nice. What's the long answer then?
You're my friend and I like comics.
All right, I like that one. I like that one. It wasn't that long. That's okay. Well, Rene, you've been on the show for a very long time. Maybe people know you, maybe people don't. The first episode you were on, I think we talked about a lot of different stuff. Apparently, I had recorded a guitar song on your computer and you wanted to somehow show it to everybody, or a lot of stuff that we had done. We did in college because we hung out a lot. That's how I know Rene, is from college through the comic book club. So like, we've been buds for a while, and we've also been on this show for a while. We've worked on all sorts of different things together, and now you're here and we're talking about you. So I guess, like, I don't know. what are your memories of getting involved on this show? Because I know way back in the day, during the Destroy the Cyborg days, we did the Invincible episode of the first iteration of I Read Comic Books that lives in the vaults that I will one day maybe release to patrons if they beg me enough. God help you if I do. But other than that, when we jumped into this new iteration of IRCB, what are your memories around getting into this show?
Well, first of all, I just want to mention that I met Mike and Brian when I was 19, so it was a very long time ago. We were all babies. This was pre facial hair, I think, for both Mike and I.
Yes.
But from what I remember is like we had done Destroy the Cyborg together back when it was a review site back in the day. And I remember when we were originally trying out the podcasting format, and this is also back when you used to make small reviews on YouTube, if I recall correctly. For
Maybe
for Destroy the Cyb.
If they existed, I don't know where they are now. They're lost to the ether, but that's okay.
Yeah. So I remember the pivot. I remember talking about it. I remember all the original designs, and I think this happened right around the time I was graduating, so it was a lot of things happening for me, so I was moving around a lot. And then I think when I finally settled, and I don't remember how it went about, I think it was just one of those things where I think you might have just been like, hey, you want to be on this? And I said yes.
I mean, that sounds a lot like me. That sounds like Mike is 100 episodes into his show. He just added a couple of other people, and then he went, oh yeah, Rene reads comic books. Maybe I should ask Rene.
Yeah, because again, we met through the comic book club, and Mike was the first president, and I was the second. So it was, we had a lot of fun times, and also there were just a lot of like the projects that we worked on in college where it was a lot of like, hey, I'm doing this thing. You want to help out with that? And we just did that for a couple of years, and it's kind of just kept going with that vibe, and I kind of love it. So that's what I remember. And and then just next thing I know, it's just kept growing and become a new thing. And we've tried out a lot of things over the years, and I'm still honored to be a part of it. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, this isn't about me though, Rene. I mean, I just, you're still here. You're still on the show. We try to get you in the rotation when we can.
I meant as the entity of IRCB. I'm so glad to be a part of
sure.
IRCB as a whole.
Before we jump into those questions, I just want to remind the listeners, if you listen to my episode, Rene was on my first appearance with Mike. We were talking Dragon Ball Z, so.
Oh yeah,
is that
the
true?
lineage is thick. Yeah. It was my first episode as a guest, not as a regular of the show. So it's all interconnected. Just
I had to bring you guys back together for the first time in a minute.
Everything is connected.
Yes. In the IRCB cinematic universe, like it all comes back together, right? Can't wait for Robert Downey Jr. to replace me. But to get into but outside of comic books, Rene, you are a very talented individual, period, right? Not only do you love comic books and you enjoy discussing them and things of that nature, but the thing that I also know you very well for is that you like to cook. So I'm curious, how did you get into cooking? And what is your favorite dish to cook for yourself or for your family and friends? I mean, like, and I not to say that like everybody cooks. Most people cook their own food. Rene cooks very well. And I'm just saying, as someone who's eaten his food plenty of times, he's a very, very good cook. So I'm curious as how that, you went from just like a regular guy making food to like, I'm actually shopping for like good shit to make for myself and my friends and family. So how do you go from that? What was your path to that?
Yeah. I was like, also, we should mention that also we had a deal in college where it was if you buy the ingredients, I would make a meal.
Exactly.
Which that was good. So actually my dad worked in the restaurant industry out in California, in Orange County, and my grandparents also had a family restaurant also in California. So I was just kind of always surrounded by people in the industry, and we'd go and visit the restaurant for like my grandparents' restaurant, and We'd go and visit my dad at work sometimes, or he would always take us to restaurants where his friends worked at, or like his mentors. And it seemed like everyone knew my dad, like no matter where we went, they'd be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, these are your kids. That's cool. And on top of that, I just also have a really big family that's always cooking on both sides. My mom's family has endless stories about the restaurant, and all of my dad's siblings also work in the restaurant industry, and my aunts were always cooking. And so it was just always there. There was always a pot on the stove or something in the oven. And like that, all the stories had to revolve around, being in a restaurant. So it was just there, and it permeated that. And I just also had this desire to help out when I got older. So I really just kind of started asking. I was like, hey, teach me how to make something. And I actually remember the very first thing that I cooked, which was a fried egg when I was 9.
Hey, that's cool.
Yeah, I was very proud of that. So I told everyone. Like,
hey man, 9-year-olds, that's a big deal. I don't think I could properly have cooked eggs when I was 9 years old. So that's pretty cool, dude.
Not without breaking it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't remember that. I remember. I don't know if I broke the yolk now. Oh, dang it, Danny.
Break them.
I've made a ton of eggs and I still screwed up. So yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Oh, I guess we're turning this into a scramble.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You just got to pivot. You just got to keep going.
Right.
Although I guess my favorite dish that I like to make for myself is actually a spin off of ropa vieja, which is a Spanish dish in origin, but it's now like one of the national dishes of Cuba. And traditionally, it's a dish that's kind of made over from leftovers, so it's really easy to make. And there's also like tons and tons of variations. So one of the things that I like about it is that you can always just kind of make it differently. You don't have to be really rigid with the recipe. My family's variation is my dad's from Mexico City, so he cooks in a very specific kind of style, and there's a certain kind of like palette that he has that I've kind of used as well. But the basics of it is like it's a stewed meat with tomatoes and a sofrito with, it's served with rice or beans. And we always kind of do like a red sauce. And I actually made it this past week. I made it with some pork. Nice. And it was really good. It could have used more chilies, but is what it is. But it's my favorite dish. It's really easy to make. You just kind of brown your meat, and then you add your salsa essentially, and you just kind of let it stew for a very long time, and then serve over either flavored rice, white rice. It's good with both. And it's great. Also freezes really nice. Which also helps if it's if you add too many chilies when you thaw it, kind of waters it down. So
that's good.
Yeah. So it's good. And I guess how I got into cooking, other than my family, was I also wanted to be a chef from the age of like 6 to about 17. I wanted to be a chef, and then I actually got a job in the food service industry, and then like 2 or 3 years in, I was like, yeah, maybe not. But
imagine, I'm just imagining the bear, but it's Rene.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I wanted to be a chef, but then I watched the bear and
right.
Listen, there are a couple episodes. Listen, I've only seen season 1 of the bear.
Sure. That's fine. It's understandable, dude.
It's really hard to watch. Not that I was in like like I didn't work in nice kitchens or anything, but I did work in the food service industry for about 10 years, and my last position I was technically the sous chef, and they did offer me the executive chef position at that restaurant, which was when I had to make that decision. I was like, oh, do I want to do this? Do I want to run my own kitchen, or am I passionate enough to do this, or do I want to do other things? And that was when I had to have that conversation after, like 10 or 12 years in the industry. And like with anything, you've got to really be passionate. You got to love it. And, while I love cooking, I'm also just like, I don't need to do it in the kitchen. I can make food for friends and family, and that's enough.
Right.
That's enough for me.
sometimes when you turn it into a career, it changes the way you feel about it, right? So like maybe you don't want to lose that passion for the cooking.
Yeah. It was it's a great experience though. It was because I also didn't go to culinary school. I learned everything from the chefs that I worked with in the various places. So it was just kind of like trial by fire essentially. But that's where a lot of like my because basically the way that I cook too, if I'm not going to make a specific meal, a lot of the time I always say this, I'm just basically doing an episode of Chopped every night. I look in my pantry and go, what can we do with this? And that's what I like about cooking is you can always pivot and kind of just be like, oh, it needs a little bit of this, oh, we can change it with this. You can't do that with baking. So I don't bake for that specific reason.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I love cooking for friends and family. And although honestly, my family's a little too honest sometimes. The thing I really hate the most is my brother was like, it was a soft B. And I'm like, make your own food then.
Right. It gives you a rough grade and then probably doesn't even help clean up afterwards, right? That sounds like
yeah, that's
maybe
accurate.
I mean, I know your brothers at least a little bit.
Yeah. And for anyone that wants to know this, like, I would never put anything up on TikTok because it's I don't plate really nice. It's more like ugly, delicious stuff. Like it tastes great, but it doesn't really look that nice. It's so
that's every meal that I make most of the time. And I feel like I'm a pretty okay cook and it's just like, this is not presentable, but I promise, close your eyes, Kelly. It tastes very, very good. And usually most of the time it's right.
If I come to find out that Rene is that TikToker that just cooks in a dorm room looking set, I'm gonna lose it.
Oh my god!
just like a secret TikTok that Rene has.
Rene's secretly making gourmet food on a hot plate under a blanket in his house.
No, luckily I have a nice stove. That's the.
They watch a lot of anime in whoever's cooking all that. So
interesting.
The clues
Danny,
are adding up.
We might be onto something here.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that they watched anime. Oh no. Similarities.
Well, I mean, the other thing that folks may not know about you is you're also a writer. You write, and Rene, you don't have to talk about this, but you are a writer. And I think clearly, for those of you at home who have access to the raw show notes for this episode, you can see how well answered all of these questions are because Rene is a very talented writer and he's doing it on the side when he's not doing his day job. So I'm curious, how's the writing going? And if you don't want to talk about it, just tell me and we can cut all this out.
No, I put it in the notes, so we'll talk about it.
I got you, motherfucker.
I know. I will say my immediate response is also what I put as the first bullet under this question in the notes, which is, how dare you? I thought we were friends.
The best part of these episodes is all the reveals that just happen. Like the last one I was on with Kate, chainmail? What? From where? How does one get there? And now Rene just a writer, and then I'm looking at the notes and I'm like, God, it makes sense just as much as that TikTok theory I had earlier. So
I think I follow you on TikTok, Danny, so I can disprove that one. This one's a little harder.
Listen, man, I've got like 3 or 4 accounts on TikTok, man. Anybody can have any accounts. Anyways, oh, no. Rene, tell us about this writing. Stop trying to get away from this question.
All right. Well, writing has its ups and downs, but that's all part of the process. However, at the current moment, the passion is still alive, and honestly, I think that's all anyone can ask for. Because literally, you always go through that cycle of like, this is a great idea, and then you start writing it, and you're feeling good, and then you reread it, and you're like, this is awful. I'm awful. I don't know why I did this. I should not do this. I should literally do anything else. And then you come back to it and you're like, it's not as bad as I thought. This is actually a pretty good idea. So I don't know where we're at in that stage. But I'm feeling pretty good about it. And yeah. So yeah, but it's
But you've been working on things, right? I mean, you don't have to get into specifics or whatever. And the only reason I wanted to bring it up is because I feel like for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Like it's not has nothing to do with this show. Just outside of everything, every time I feel like I've talked to you, you've been working on something. You've been working on a project, and I feel like over time you have gotten better at writing from the handful of small bits and pieces that I have read. And we, for folks at home who may not know, every year for the past couple of years, Rene and I and a couple of our friends, we get together to try to do like a NaNoWriMo, the National November Writing Month, which is where you try to write like 30,000 or 50,000 words in the month of November. And we all kind of set our own goals and stuff like that. But like, Rene, you have been hard working at it for a while. So I don't mean to like just keep shoving this up your ass to say like you got to talk about it. But man, you have been doing this for quite a while and you've been working hard. So I just want folks at home to know that you do a lot of really cool shit.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike. That means a lot. And yeah, I've been writing for a while, and actually, it was one of the things that I went to school for. Was actually, well, not one of the things. It was the thing I went to school for. I have a degree in writing. Yeah. Mike might remember this from our university days, but I tend to work on a lot of projects at the same time. So I do have several things that I'm working on. And like Mike said, like I have also been submitting things very regularly to various competitions. And these sorts of things include like television scripts. I've written some comic book scripts. These are all original works, but I am also still researching and working on spec scripts because that's what you need for the industry. I have had a few minor accolades on some various projects. Most recently, I was a finalist for a TV pilot contest. So that was nice. Those are always really nice because it reinforces that like, you're doing the right thing and the work is kind of paying off. So it is kind of nice, man, for that. But yeah, I'm actively working to get representation. And most recently, the thing that I'm working on, actually was working on it right before this. Which is, I don't know why I'm so embarrassed to say it. I don't know why. But like I'm currently working on a new draft of a fantasy novel. I'm not going to get too much into it. I'm not going to say any more than that because I do got to keep some secrets.
That's fine.
And actually, Mike has read some of the bits from that. So, but yeah.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's
very cool. Very
cool. I've been writing a lot over, for, I guess, like Mike said, 6 or 7 years, probably longer than that. But I've only kind of recently gotten really, really focused on it because it was just like, got to keep the dream alive. And, we all here love stories, and that's something that we bond over. And, I also happen to like telling them. So it was a little bit of a curveball to see that in the notes, but it's,
I mean, I gotta do it to you, man. That's what these episodes are.
The thing I was going to say was like, it is really nice to hear Mike say that I'm a good writer. Cause like, you get so much in your own head with anything that you do. Sure. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. So, it is nice to hear. And also from someone who I respect, like Mike, which he's also my friend, but very nice to hear.
Shut up, Rene. Oh my God. Danny, just throw another question out here. Rene and I have been talking too much to each other.
You had another thing that you were going to say. Say your thing to the people.
Oh, no. Yeah. Mine was a dumb bit about I can't wait for the Paul and Nick episodes where I start to like really crack open the caskets of like friendship and stuff. The maybe never will happen Zander episode will be the spookiest episode of IRCB. So I'm just saying, like, you and I go back a long time. We've got a Brian episode coming. Brian and I go back a long time. Like, the further we start going back in this roster, the more wild I think it's going to get. That's all that I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Find out Brian's secrets.
I feel like we need to go to your next question. I don't know, Mike. My question was really built upon the rest of the structure.
I see.
We can keep going through. I'll definitely chime in. You guys have such good conversation that I don't want to step like. If it does feel like I step back into, I started as a listener, so like I do step back into that role.
Sure.
Because one thing I constantly kept asking for was like, well, how did the IRCB crew kind of came together, right? And now Mike finally, let's do panelist episode. So like, this is very interesting for me. Oh God, I can't.
All right, well,
the Brian episode is going to be a banger. I tell you that right now.
I agree.
Write in your questions now, folks, because we did get one question from the Discord that we are going to try to go over before we wrap up tonight. So I'll get to this next one, and then we'll follow on with Danny's. So like the big question of the night, which is, how did you get into comic books? What keeps you reading comic books? That's what I'm always curious. Like, we've known each other for a really long time. We had gotten into comics independently, and we've continued to pretty regularly read comics for so long. So like, for the folks at home who don't know, how did you get into them, and what keeps you in this medium?
Yeah, so I got into comics because of my older brothers. So for those that don't know, I have 4 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 5, and my eldest brother was obsessed with the X-Men, and he would borrow comics, and he would scrounge for like coins and things like that to get comics secondhand, and he would bring them over, and he would trade things to get like the old Marvel metal cards. So we built up like decks of them, and so we just had this knowledge of the comics almost without, just kind of like through all these different ways of just scrounging for them. And so that was prime time when all the animated shows for Marvel and DC were out. Also, Lois and Clark was on at that time.
Classic.
And my dad was also really into martial arts movies, so we also watched that, and that helped lead directly into Dragon Ball Z, which leads into my love for manga and anime. But for the longest time, it was just kind of this sort of like, whatever you could get, because like, we didn't have cable, we didn't regularly get comic books or things like that, so it was a lot of like borrowing or getting things secondhand, going over to friends' houses, and I wasn't really able to really get my hands on comics regularly until I was in high school and got my first job. And actually, I had a friend in 6th grade who had given me a preview book, which I actually have it still.
I saw Rene look on the camera. I knew he was trying to find it on his shelf.
So it's this one. It's the Shonen Jump previews book, and I read this almost daily until I got my job. And then what I did with my first paycheck was I went to Barnes & Noble and I bought the first volume of the first series in this book, which was Hikaru no Go. And that was where my love for manga really kind of took off. Then I got into Naruto, and then I got into Bleach, and we never looked back. Took me a while to get into One Piece, but we
all get there eventually. We all get there. Yeah.
But when I got really into comics was I went out to visit my brother, and he was like, we went to a corner store that also sold comic books, and it was like the place that he would go, and he was like, you can buy one comic, any comic. It doesn't matter the price, but you can only get one. And they had the like double issue, final issue of the Sinestro Corps War. And so I was like,
cool.
Yeah. So I have, since like, there was that kind of like, just grab whatever you can aspect, I didn't care about spoilers. So I grabbed that one, I read it. And as soon as I came back home, I immediately started buying Green Lantern, and then just, whatever looked good on the shelves. And, it was just, that was the catalyst for re-entering the comic book world in full force. And that led directly into when I went to college, where I met Mike and Brian at our campus life night, where there was a table that had comic books spread out. And I went to that specifically looking for a comic book club. I was like, if there isn't one, I'm going to be heartbroken, but I'm sure there has to be. And there was. And, that's being in that club absolutely cemented comics in my life. And, the friendships that came with it were also pretty cool. This podcast is living proof of that, Yeah. And, as for, sorry, go ahead, Danny.
I was going to ask, did you meet Mike or Brian first, or were they both sitting at the table?
They were both at the table, but they were both at the table, but I definitely talked to Mike first, because Mike was the president at the time.
And Brian's the
actually, I
muscle.
don't know.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I was the president. Listen, well, let me just be. I was Rene my freshman year, like where I went to the campus life night that they did, and there was like, oh no, comic book club, and then I started one. Right, like that was where my mind was.
God,
with
we
it.
needed a mic at the university.
Listen, my whole life is defined by me saying, "Oh, this doesn't exist. Let me do it my own shitty way." And so that's pretty much how I run things. Like this podcast, I was like, "Oh, comic book podcasts suck. Let me do my own." That's a whole other discussion. So, Rene, but you were gonna say, what keeps you reading comic books? Because we got a little bit more to get through. I don't want to. I don't want to reminisce anymore myself.
Yeah, we'll try to push through. So I was gonna say that like what I've usually said is that like the stories have always kind of kept me in, and that's partially true. But honestly, it's probably the friendships I've made through comics. All of my friends who read comics or manga or manhwa, they're all great people who recommend great books. Like I find books on my own, but a lot of the recommendations I've got in the past like 3 to 5 years have all been from people in the IRCB group, and they're all stellar. So, I don't think I would have read as much without that. And like, I don't want to be all shonen about it, but and be like, it's friendship, but y'all got great taste. So just take it. Yeah. Also the art, the art in comics and manga is pretty rad. So,
come back for them pretty pictures every single time.
Every time.
So, Rene, real quick, since you're talking about art, where are we at? Is it who's the top manga? Is it Kubo? Is there Oda? Like, who's your mangaka?
Takeshi
I know that's
Obata
like making you choose out of your children. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like you saw
he knows.
just the. But I would say, Takeshi Obata is he's a manga artist. He doesn't do any story writing, but if I see that he drew it, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna buy it. Actually, one of the recommendations is which I actually picked up because I saw that he was the artist on it. Also, there's a current one running right now, Shoha Shoten. He does the art for it, and it's phenomenal also. Yeah. But anything he draws, I'm like, I have to. But after that, it's like, I can't choose.
Yeah.
Fair.
It's picking your favorite child. Yeah.
All right. This is where I kind of have a question now. And this is we'll try to answer this as much as you can, because this could be a whole episode or a whole series.
Yeah.
But what do you think, especially to you and personally, what do you think is the biggest difference in your experience with manga versus like American comics?
That's such a big question.
Just real easy, just a quick softball over the plate.
Yeah, nice gentle one. So I'm going to explain this by saying, like, there's a famous meme where they make a joke on where you start with American comics versus where you start with manga. And the American comics is always like, oh, well, you got to read this issue and then you've got to read this other tie-in and this other tie-in. They're like, where do you start with manga? Volume 1, bro. Which, it's very memeable. I get it. But honestly, that's kind of one of my favorite things about it, is that like it's very easy to recommend to people. And also like there's like the fact that there aren't too many spin-offs. Like obviously there are series that are very big and have crazy tie-ins and spin-offs or whatever in manga, but like the ones that I really love are the really sort of self-contained stories that some of them are massive like One Piece, and some of them are a little more contained like Bakuman or Monster. But there's a sort of like finality in that this series is just this set number of volumes. Like this is it. This is everything. There's nothing more to this. You can always speculate on it. And there's just a different kind of like energy. And like we were talking about Fire Force earlier and how crazy that world is and how crazy the world for Soul Eaters, and, the world of One Piece is wild as well. People always say sky's the limit, but like with manga, it feels like the sky is too small. And I really kind of love that about that. And I don't get that same feeling with, Western books, like, even though like there's independent stories like Saga or Fables or like some of the newer stories that are kind of very small and self-contained, but it has this different kind of energy to it that it's really hard to explain. And like, while I like those, I'm still more drawn to manga for whatever reason. And then also talking about art, while I love the colors of books like Green Lantern Far Sector, the art is gorgeous. You know,
yeah, boy.
The color. Also, I don't think Thor would read well without color. I love the coloring in Thor books. You know,
yeah.
But there is something about like, you know, reading Berserk or Slam Dunk or Haikyuu, you know, seeing these panels in black and white, there's still something really charged about them, and so gorgeous, the fact that like sometimes I really don't like it when there's color pages where I'm like, oh, you know, but like there's just something about it that I'm really drawn to, and that really just kind of sets it apart and makes me want to read manga more than American comics. But that's not to say that like I don't love American comics. Like I think some of my first comics were Superman and Spider-Man, which is probably why they're my favorites. You know, but yeah, that's for me. And also like, just for the audience, please keep in mind, this is what I think. I'm not saying these are true. So this is
no one's
just me.
We're asking Rene what Rene thinks, man. It's all good.
No,
but I'm telling you, I would love to read a Green Lantern black and white book, though. I'm just waiting for that. That's what I want. Not a black, white, and green. Just give me it in black and white. I'm really curious to see if that would work.
Yeah, because there'd be a lot to do with like space. You know, the vastness of space and black and white. That could be really cool.
That's true.
I love that.
What if I told you that now you can buy American comics in Takoban size? Because DC Comics is like, oh, manga's popular, let's reprint all our stuff in that format.
Yeah,
listen, that would make
that's a good deal.
That is a great deal. That's another thing, is the pricing on tankobons like is pretty nice. That was great. Like some of those, like, don't get me wrong, I love a nice hardcover, like my Superman Earth ones. I love those, but also like, I can get a couple Haikyuu volumes for like the same price of one.
Yeah.
Also, like, it looks.
Yeah, you walk into a Barnes and Noble
shelf.
Yeah, that is true. I do like the clean. Well, depending on the series, that's a whole other beef that I have with manga series.
Kodansha.
But we're gonna move on from that before I start to rant and rave, because that was a very big question. I do want to get to these last two questions that we have here before we wrap. The first one comes from our good buddy Kyle on the Discord. He asked, how many times have you hit the 100 chapter limit on the Shonen Jump app? Because first off, I didn't know that existed until you told me, because you hit it one day, and I remember a furious amount of text coming through a group chat of you just being like, I can't believe that they limit it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm curious, how many times have you hit that? Because that's a great question from Kyle.
First of all, the story was ramping up. I was upset. They're just like, that day was the reading day. It was nice and sunny.
Yeah.
It was a good fall day. It was the conditions were perfect, Mike. Okay. They were perfect. I had nothing else to do. 100 chapters in, I was like, oh, it's getting good. Sorry, you've hit the limit. It's not even 3. What am I supposed to do?
Do you remember what you were reading? No, okay.
I don't remember what the series was. I just remember you just furiously coming into a chat.
No, I
just
remember
like,
it was Boys Over Flowers.
Okay.
Which I had problems with that series while I was reading it, but it was Boys Over Flowers, and I was upset.
Sure.
And actually, I was so upset.
Have you hit?
I was so upset. I never went back to that series.
Wow. Okay. Well, have you hit the limit since then?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot. I haven't
listened.
Like, I saw that on Discord, and I was like, I haven't kept track, but I know that it's more often than I'd like.
Great.
I think I've only hit it twice this year, though, maybe 3 times.
Okay.
But overall,
that's understandable. But what we're getting at is that Rene reads a lot of manga, and he reads a lot of manga through the Viz Shonen Jump app, maybe the Viz app as well. But We got to get to this last
want
question.
a sponsor, I am available.
Yeah, we're getting Viz on the phone tomorrow. I'll have the higher ups talk to
Hello,
to
Mr.
them.
Viz.
Yeah.
Mr.
Mr. Viz, could you talk to the IRCB comic books people, please? But final question before we wrap the show for sure. And this is a big one, so take the time that you need. Knowing Danny and I for a little bit, you've worked, you've been on the show for forever. You've known me for a long time. At this point, you've known Danny for quite a bit of time. What is a comic that you would recommend to each of us? And I see in the notes now that this may have been a mistake asking. So go ahead, Rene. Tell us what you think.
Listen, I don't threaten me with a good time, Mike. Is all I'm going to say.
I know.
So I have comic and manga recs for both of you. So strap in.
Amazing.
Mike, for you, the comic book rec is actually a Peter Parker Spider-Man issue, Just Another Manic Monday, which actually it's 2 issues. So it's issues 51 and 52 of Peter Parker Spider-Man, written by Zeb Wells, pencils by Francisco Herrera, inks by Wayne Foucher. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Colors by Studio F, letters by Randy Is it Gentle or Gentile? Gentile.
Probably Gentile.
Okay. Again, sorry if I'm butchering it, but yeah. So, and the reason that I'm recommending these issues is because these are the issues of an arc that are about sort of Spider-Man outside of him doing his regular Spider-Man thing. And it's very focusing on this aspect of a manic Monday. It's just you're going through the motions, you're feeling that kind of we now call it the Sunday scaries, or it's carried over into Monday. It's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there's a lot of great Spider-Man humor in it and just lots of good Spider-Man tales, the tone of it feels very much like that tone that we have seen in the more modern books, which is actually why I refer to those books like Hawkeye or She-Hulk or even Spider-Woman from a couple years ago. I refer to those as Manic Monday books because it immediately makes me think of these 2 issues because of that tone. So I think, Mike, you'll absolutely dig it because it's got classic Spider-Man and it's also got that tone in there.
Okay. My guess is that this looks a little bit older, so I think it's probably on Marvel Unlimited. So
I'm super surprised how old it is because Zeb Wells has been writing over 20 years. I didn't realize that. This is from 2003.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah, I picked up issue 51 in a dollar bin across the street from my middle school. So that's how I have that issue.
Gotcha.
And as for manga recs, Mike, I've recommended this one manga to you 1,000 times, so I'm going to do it again. And that is Kakaishi, with story and art by Yellow Tanabe. It's fantastic, incredible world building. It's a story with great character growth, as well as this theme of dealing with the consequences of the characters' actions. Not just the main characters, but everyone in the story has to deal with the consequences of everybody's actions. And it's wonderful. And also the power system is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. One of my favorites. And then D. Gray Man, story and art by Katsuro Hoshino. This is one of my favorite manga of all time. I literally recommend it to everyone. Literally to the point where I was doing different recommendations for Danny. And then I was just like, Danny should also read D. Gray Man because it's incredible. It's incredible. Amazing character designs, fascinating world.
I know.
Has amazing plays on mythology and fantasy tropes. And the story is so good. It is unfinished, so I'm sorry, but it's so good. It's so good.
Well, the best part about these Recs is that I know that they're on the Shonen Jump app. So that's awesome. I love that. Mm-hmm. Love that for both of us, Danny.
Yeah.
Speaking of Danny, we're going to get into his recommendations here. So for Danny, another Spider-Man one. Again, another older issue. This one's from 1991, which is Spider-Man number 17. Writer Ann Nocenti, pencils by Rick Leonardi, inks by Al Williamson, colors by Gregory White, and letters by Chris Eliopoulos. And this is a phenomenal standalone story where Spider-Man has a near-death experience and actually battles Thanos. It's one of the best comics I've ever read. I was also not aware that this was a kind of semi-famous collectible until I was researching it for this. Because again, this is another dollar bin grab that I got in middle school. I just found it, I read it, I loved it, and it's one of my favorites. And so I was just like, who would appreciate a comic like this is Danny. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if it's on a database somewhere. And then I was like, the first link was an eBay link. And I was like, oh no. Well, if it comes down to it, I will dig through my records and find mine, and I will mail it to you.
No, I should be able to read it, without having to break the bank. I do like this creative team, though. It's a pretty good pedigree there.
It's a pretty good team, for sure.
Yeah. It's a great book. It's also really beautiful. I really love the art in it. As for manga, well, first and foremost, D. Gray Man, obviously, for all the previous reasons stated. Secondly, All You Need Is Kill, original story by Hiroshi Sakurazaka, storyboard by Ryusuke Takeuchi, and art by the wonderful Takeshi Obata. This is an incredible adaptation of the novel by Hiroshi Sakurazaka. It's a great sci-fi story with gorgeous art. And I actually picked up this manga because of Takeshi Obata. And I read it, thought it was amazing, then read the novel, and then saw Edge of Tomorrow when it came out. This manga is one of my favorites. I think you'll love the art and also all the character introspection. And again, it's beautiful. So I think you'll really dig it. And my last recommendation for you, Danny, is Siren. It was another manga, story and art by Toshiaki Iwashiro, and another science fiction piece. But it's really good. It deals with time travel. The power system is phenomenal, and the fight scenes, Danny, they're so cool. So I would love for you to read this book and then also be able to talk about it. I could talk about this book all the time. It's one of the ones that I am still collecting because it's also one of those books that I collect weird sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I'll just get them as soon as I can. And there's a couple series where I found them randomly in the wild. So that's how I have to find the other volumes. And this is one of those series. So,
right.
Yeah. So those are my recommendations to you both. And I hope that you read them. I hope that you enjoy them. And I hope that we can talk about them in the future.
One day I will read D. Gray Man, Renee. This is not the first time you recommended it to me, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm
going to have to start buying you the volumes for your birthday. Force feed them to you.
I know. You did that once, and I did read Blue Exorcist, Claymore, Hunter x Hunter.
Ooh, Claymore.
So it did work. And Claymore was by far my fave. Totally loved that book. I still need to finish it. I think I got 3/4 of the way through on the Shonen Jump. Yeah, it's on Shonen Jump app. It's awesome. It's so cool.
Incredible.
Weird power system in that one. But anyways, D. Gray Man, I will put at the top of my next manga series that I need to read list after I finish Naruto. Is that okay?
Yes. And then also read Kakaishi.
I'll read Kakaishi too.
It's also on the Viz app.
Yeah, I saw that. You made it very easy for me.
Yeah. I have seen the first couple of seasons of The Gray Man of the original anime adaptation. So I do like that world. I think it was ongoing at the time and it stopped. They had a hiatus or they redid it. I don't know. Anime's weird.
Yeah. It's very famous. It's another one of those famous series where it's gone on hiatus a lot because of the author's health. And so it also moved out of Shonen Jump. I can't remember which magazine. I think it's just Shonen Magazine now. It's now a monthly book, but it's kind of eternally on hiatus. Although this year, earlier, we got a whole volume release on the Shonen Jump app. And I screamed out loud. I was very happy. I then reread the entire series to be caught up.
Nice. Well, this is great. This is fantastic. I hope that folks at home have learned a lot about Rene and his very storied past and very cool life that he's led and he leads outside of this podcast. Thank you for the recommendations, Rene. This is actually super cool. Always nice to get recommendations from folks on the show, and especially I like that these episodes, I get to like corner someone and be like, tell me a book that you like that you think I'd like. It's pretty great. So this is fun. I want to say thank you to everybody listening. Thank you to Brian for proof listening. Thank you to Zander for editing. I don't know what the next episode is going to be after this one, so good luck and Godspeed to all of you. But until next time, comics are good and so are you.